Okay, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back, and welcome to episode 2 of In the Tone Zone with Billy Trone. So today, I'm going to touch on something that we had kind of mentioned right at the end of last week's episode, and that was using the AX8 for a similar, very versatile bass patch. And again, we're going to use one patch, utilize scenes to get a good, versatile, direct, clean kind of a sound. So just a normal, bass into an amp and a cab. We're going to do a distorted sound for rock and metal bass. And we're going to do a little bit of a synth effect type of a scene for almost emulating key bass. And I think between all of those three sounds, you have, generally speaking, 99% of what you would ever be asked to do on a gig, right? So a lot of people have been, throwing around that the AX8 isn't suitable for bass, or, it doesn't get the same sound or feel or anything like that. But some guys are really using it well, and I think you can get a lot of really good tones with it, and you can do anything you need it to do. So I'm here to just show you guys how I approach that whole, coming up with a patch that sounds like a bass amp, it feels like a bass amp, does everything I need it to do. So as always, we're just going to start. We have our shunt from input to output. So this is just the direct signal. Here we are. So right now that's just the sound of the pickups in my bass and my hands, and that's it. If I can engage the preamp and change the tone of the direct signal if I want to. So that's already has a character to it, kind of has a vibe, and in any good bass in your hands, just a direct signal, like plugging your bass directly into your interface, you should be able to get some semblance of a vibe. Especially if you have active electronics, you can already kind of shape and mold the tone to be whatever you want it to be. So now I'm going to start just like we did with the guitar patch. Start with an amp and a cab. And since we're doing bass, again, I'm going to have the stereo ultra res. So I'm blending two cabs. But for this, I think I'm going to use a 115 and a 410 with a tweeter. Let's see. So first I'm going to grab the 115 LA bass. Proximity is at 3, and that's just a little bit of extra low end emulating proximity effects, so how close or far away the mic is from the cab. And the other one, let's see, bunch of 412s, 112s, 212s. .410 plus tweeter SV bass. Here we are. Alright, and we're going to turn the proximity effect off of this cab because I realistically am using it for the 115 is the low end, and the 410 with the tweeter is the top end, just to get a really nice balanced round sound. And then there are only a handful of bass amps in here, and for the longest time I actually thought the 65 bass guy bass was a bass amp, like a Fender Bassman, and I actually believe that it's just a low-end boosted 65 Bassman, a guitar amp. That being said, you can get some really nice, super clean kind of bass tones with that. the three that I use most often are the Citrus Bass 200, the Fractal Bass can be cool. It can be a little overwhelming sometimes. There's a lot of lows and or highs depending on how you set it up. My personal favorite is the SV Bass because, you know, Ampeg. And the USA 400s are a Mesa Boogie bass amps, and those are also some of my favorite, like, real amps. Let's just hear how some of these sound. Let's start with the orange. And we're just going to set everything flat real quick. And that sounds a little, crank it up a little bit. Sounds a little like this. Cool. So I mean, that's already, like, you know, it's pretty beefy. We can turn the gain up a little bit and see how that does. So already we're getting a lot more spank, a lot more, you know, attack. So I think that's pretty cool. We can turn the presence up. Let's just dime it, just because I feel like we're lacking a little bit of that right now. So that's pretty cool. Let's keep going with that for just a second. Let's scoop some of the mids and boost some more top end. I'm going to stay away from the bright switch because whatever frequency for a lot of these bass amp sims that's boosting, I'm not the hugest fan of. And then we'll just turn the low end up just a little bit. I mean, that's already real nice, versatile. You know, it changes nicely from fingerstyle to slap. So that's pretty cool. Now let's hop over to I think we'll do the Mesa, because it's very different. The SV is pretty similar to the orange in my opinion. Let's start with the 1. Again, we'll set everything kind of flat. Again, we'll turn it up a little bit. Let's see. So already we have a lot more top end to this. It's a lot sparklier. It's a lot more present than the orange. But it's a little flat. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the depth up just a little bit, add a little bit more presence, and then some more low end. So despite putting up more low end, once you add the treble on these particular amps, I find that it's almost it's like the treble and the bass frequencies fight each other, and it cancels out whatever low end you're adding. So if I pull this back down a little bit, really just crank the low end. I mean, that's getting there. Still very bright. Still missing a little bit of really deep, rich low end. And that's with the depth all the way up. We'll just crank the bass, because why not? So I mean, we're not really getting a lot of that. So let's try the 2. Again, we'll set it flat real quick. Crank it up a little bit. Already a lot more low end to it. Let's go ahead and turn the low end up a little more again with bass and depth. So now this one's responding a little bit more. So since, you know, that sounds nice, and I think if we worked on it long enough, we could add EQs in post. We could go to the graphic here and add low end. I would prefer to just try another amp and see, you know, even the orange was a lot closer to what we're going for right off the bat. So I think we should try the SV. So again, just flat. It's got more character. It's a little bit closer to what we're going for. But again, I think the orange is doing what I want the most. So to keep this nice and quick, we're just gonna hop back over to that. And let's see. Turn depth and presence up a little bit. So now that's actually already too much low end for my personal taste. Oh yeah. Very nice. Okay, so we can go with that. Let's take a look at our cabs real quick. I have the low cut up to 60 because anything below that is a little bit unnecessary in my opinion. Live's a little bit different story, but for the most part, as far as like when I'm running sound, maybe I'll leave some of that open depending on the system that I'm on. But we'll start with that. I think I want to push the presence up a little more because I'm a big fan of a big snappy, very slap, you know, trebly centric kind of a bass tone. So I'm actually going to scoop the mids just a little bit. Presence is all the way up, trebles up a little bit. Yeah, now we're talking. But it's not super ice picky and harsh when you go back to fingerstyle. Sometimes if you dial in what is a really, really cool, super you know, super trebly slap tone, you know, very Marcus Miller or, you know, old school Larry Graham, something like that. Some of those tones, when he plucks so hard and it's so attack heavy that it can very quickly become ice picky. And this doesn't necessarily have that. You know, it's got a lot of presence and you get a lot of that nice string noise. Dig it. So the last thing I'm going to do, again, is I'm going to put a compressor in front. Because in my opinion, compression for bass is like super important. It's a big thing. I don't always use it, but for something like this, when I can do whatever I want with compression, versus like if you're not happy with the physical compressor you have or something like that, that might be different. But since we're in this situation, all those nice, oof, we're actually going a little heavy on that. Just gonna boost it up to 10 and pull the compression down just a little bit, and then just turn it down manually from here. Come down here. Yep, perfect. So we're still just absolutely ripping through this. And I'm actually clipping the output of the AX8 itself. So I'm gonna pull the whole thing down 10 dB. So now I can really lay into it, and I can hear that we're driving the front of the amp a little bit, and that's not really what I'm going for. So I'm going to compress it a little bit more and just bring it down to like 5 dB. That's a little better. Cool. The only thing is we're still, I still want like a nice clean. If I really lay into open strings or some of the bigger strings or something, I don't want the front end of the amp to be breaking up like at all. So that to me is doing everything I needed to do. Sounds pretty nice. So I'm gonna leave that there, and I think the next thing that we'll do is we'll hop over to scene 2, because that's pretty much good for my general amp tone. So now I'm gonna add a drive pedal, but the first thing I'm gonna do is actually branch off into 2 more shunt lanes. This is basically just creating multiple more signal paths that are actually not going to include our basic clean tone that we just came up with. And that sounds pretty nice, if I do say so myself. Yeah, I'm digging that a lot actually. So now I'm going to throw a drive pedal right above it. So we're basically direct signal into a compressor going into a drive. The reason I'm doing this is because obviously I'm going to use the black glass 7K or the dark glass B7K pedal, and I'm actually going to turn drive and tone all the way down. Mix and level are going to be full bore, but I'm going to bring the low cut all the way up to 1000, leave the high cut up. We want that full frequency spectrum, and I'm going to split it off into these different signal paths so that when I finish, I can come to output, and you see all these levels. I can actually blend all these different signal paths together. So basically what we're doing is the drive is going to be in level 1, our main clean tone is going to be in level 2, and then later we'll do a synth block right here, and that'll be in level 3. And for each of these scenes, I can blend them separately, which really is just important for the drive, since with the synth, I'm probably going to put them even, and it might actually just overpower the clean tone in general. And that's okay, because that's what we want to hear, is like the key bass thing. So let's go ahead and engage the drive, and then I'm going to bring the level of level 1 all the way down. So again, it's just our clean tone. I'm going to leave the tone at like 3, just to make sure it's not super brash. I'm going to put the drive back up to 5. And then I'm going to slowly start to bring up this guy until we hear it mingling. I'm actually going to throw the drive up a little bit more. The tone we'll put at 5. Let's see what that sounds like. Going, let's just bring it up to 0. So now we're getting a little bit of that drive, but since we've split it off, we can independently separate the drive signal from our clean signal. So basically our clean signal is getting the full frequency spectrum, and we are cutting off what's being distorted here, because I'm not a huge fan for most of what I do that involves distorted bass. A lot of the modern stuff, any of the gent stuff, any of the whatever kind of metal or rock stuff that you want to talk about, if it's not hardcore or thrash or something like that, I'm not looking to overdrive the low end of my bass tone, because then it gets real muddy and fuzzy and flubby. This has been the secret to producers creating these awesome, really tight, very present, attack heavy but not flubby or muddy or fuzzy kind of distorted bass tones. And I think I'm actually going to go ahead and turn the drive all the way up, and let's see how that sounds. Maybe we'll bring this down a little bit. So now we're really starting to get some clank to it, but notice you can still hear the clean tone underneath of it. I'm actually going to bring this down a little bit, -5. That's already starting to sound very similar to, records from guys like Periphery or any new modern bands like that just have really clanky, disgusting bass sounds, but they're still tight and clean. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the tone all the way up as well, and we'll see how that sounds. Bring it down a little more, like -10. So you can hear, I'm going to bring that up a little bit now. We'll try -7. And currently I'm on both of my, I'm in the middle position, so both pickups are being blended. I have Bartolini MK1 pickups in my Court Artisan 6-string. This is my fretted. I also have a fretless with the same pickups in it. And it has, you can hear the low end and that big beefy thump underneath of it. But I kind of want more, so I'm actually going to turn it down a little bit. So now you're hearing a lot more of that clean tone coming through. And on top of that, I'm actually going to go ahead and blend all the way to my neck pickup. And I like, a lot of times, I'll do this a lot if I'm playing anything I want just the biggest, beefiest kind of low end to a rock or metal, distorted bass tone. I'll use the neck pickup because it's the biggest, fattest tone that I can get without just cranking the bass on my preamp. And I actually, up to this point, haven't engaged my preamp whatsoever. So this is just the pickups, just my strings, and just what you're hearing from the AX8. And with a pick. Super cool. And then now I have that rich, clean bottom end, and this really clanky, distorted top end. And I can blend them together however I want. If I want a monstrous amount of clank to it, I actually really dig that, so I think I'm going to leave that there because it's very aggressive, and I know a couple projects that I can already use that for. That being said, just for the sake of versatility, let's go ahead and just bring the low cut down in, to like 450-ish. You're already starting to get a little bit more of that like loose fuzziness, and that's still a really great tone. And I'm gonna keep coming down to about 200. So now we're getting, a little bit closer to something I would use for thrash or hardcore. And then if we just take the low cut all the way out, so that's really disgusting, really aggressive. And it's not necessarily something that I would go for unless I'm playing doom or hardcore or something where I want that really massive full frequency distortion kind of a sound. So if we come back up to like 700, that's a lot more what I would go for, and then hop back up to 1K. So like on my physical, my Microtubes X pedal from Darkglass, I really love that pedal because it does this in a pedal. You can choose how much low end is being distorted, and I usually just crank it all the way up so that the distortion doesn't start until like 1K. And you can also add in how much clean low end and take some out and things like that. It's a really, really great pedal. It sounds fantastic. It's very, almost chainsaw-y, and it's my favorite distortion on the planet. The X Ultra just came out, and my dudes Killian and Jacob Umansky both have been advocating for it and telling me how amazing it is. So I might grab one of those down the line, but who knows? So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm gonna go ahead and save that there. And then we'll turn the drive block off and hop back over to both of our X's here. There we go. And then down here, we're gonna add in a synth block. And we have 3 voices. I do not claim to be super knowledgeable in the ways that, synths, and I've opened Massive like once in my life, that kind of thing. EDM production is not my forte, so I pretty much just try and listen to Keybase, since that's what we're going for, and come up with something cool that really emulates some of the synth patches and things like that, some of the leads or bass parts that are in songs that you have to play on a club gig or something like that. The party rock anthems and the We Found Love and all that kind of stuff. Anything that's a Calvin Harris tune or whatever it might be. It's an EDM producer with an artist singing on it, right? That's kind of what we're going for. So even just to start, I'm gonna go ahead and turn off our main clean sound, and let's just hear what this sounds like. There it is. So what I'm actually going to do is I think I will switch from a triangle to a sawtooth, just because I really dig. And that's a little wacky sounding, right? What I will do though is I'm gonna pitch it down an octave. So there's that very like aggressive saw kind of a sound. And then I'm going to bring in a square. That kind of a thing. You know, I'm already really digging it. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to sound like anything. I'm not doing a sound alike or anything like that. And then the last thing I think I'll do is a sine wave, and we'll also drop this down an octave. This will just be, and then again, I have voice levels for each of the voices, so I can blend these however I want. So let's just hear the sine wave. Bring this all the way down, bring this all the way down. And now that sounds like. So there's our really beefy low end. And I think I want to go ahead and push this up. Push the level up a little bit. Let's go to 15 dB. So that is just absolutely massive low end. And now I'm just going to blend in the square and the sawtooth voices to match it. You know, it's super low. It's realistically is below what you're hearing notes anymore. You're just kind of feeling it in a live setting at least. Super cool. And when you bust that out, everyone's gonna freak out, and your sound guy might too, because he's not gonna be ready. So make sure you warn them if you're doing something like this. So now I'm just gonna only need just a little bit. So that's kind of cool. Oh, I dig that a lot, actually. Yeah, that's cool. And that's about it, guys. I think now if I want to bring back in, let's bring in the clean tone to mix that in, maybe. That could be cool. Just to be safe, I'm just going to bring the level all the way down, even though I think we'll be fine. Boom, there we are. Let's bring it to 0 and see what happens. Let's come back down to like -5. That's a lot of sound, and that's even, you know, if you want to take the sawtooth out, you can kind of create octaves in a way that emulates even like a Pog pedal or an organ pedal or something like that. That being said, if you go below G on your low E string, it loses the fundamental. This is not a synth emulator, anything like, it's not made for that. This is a guitar and bass, amp and cab and effect, multi-effects processor. This is something they added in, and they did a pretty good job with it, in my opinion. You know, I know a lot of people who don't think that this is necessary or think it should be in here, or thought that they didn't do a good job, and I'm like, they put how how many hundreds of amps into a little black box for you. Amps, cabs, effects. The one synth block that they probably spent a couple months on or whatever, I think they did a pretty good job. You know, you can get some pretty cool tones. So I'm going to save that there. Let me know again anything else you guys want to see. Different, you know, I think next week we might start talking about real physical gear as far as bass amps. We might do a very similar thing, but maybe recreating this patch minus the synth with physical analog gear. You know, using either one of my GK heads or probably my dark glass head and my dark glass pedals. So I think that'll be a good time. Thanks for tuning in once again. This has been episode 2 of In the Tone Zone with Billy Trone. Have a great day, guys.